This is Jordan Edwards, and this is the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Hello, Casey Pedro.
Hello, Jordan. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for coming on the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Before I kick it off and introduce you, just a little bit about what this is. I'm writing a book called Business Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm conducting these podcasts for research into the book. And the whole concept of the book is that the principles that we learn in martial arts are so transferable to the business world. And so much of what I've learned over the past 11 years of training in martial arts and over my career, I found that when I've had these breakthrough moments or things that I've learned in jiu-jitsu and in all martial arts, because I've also trained in judo, although jiu-jitsu is really my heart and soul, but I love judo. It's so perfectly transferable to everything we do on a day-to-day basis in our life and also in martial arts. So before we get into that, let me just introduce you. You're Casey Pedro. You are a judo black belt. You're a lifelong martial artist. You are starting a business right now called the Crawl Program, which we'll talk about. You work in a family business at the Judo Pedro Center, teaching martial arts and judo. You are an employee at Fuji Sports, and I'd love to pick your brain on that a little bit. But and you have grown up in a martial arts and business household, watching your father, who is a contributor to this book and to this podcast, Jimmy Pedro, who is an Olympian, the owner of Fuji Mats and partner at Fuji Sports. And so you have witnessed firsthand what it takes to be a champion at the highest levels and also run a successful business. I too work with my father in our real estate business. And then in my clothing business, I work with my sister. So I run those two businesses, but I get to work with lots of different families. So welcome to the Business Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. Hit it on the head. But yeah. Good.
Very good. Well, I guess let's just jump right into it. I mean, how did you get started in martial arts? Being the daughter of an Olympian, I imagine it must have been pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I can remember. My dad was training before I was even born. So I was literally born into it and watching him going to training every morning, staying with my grandparents during the day when my mom worked. My dad was always at judo. He taught later in the evenings as well. So I think I picked it up around 5 years old, between 5 and 6 maybe. At the time, we didn't have any kids' classes, so it was one huge class. I was with 50-year-old men, and it was just a different experience than what we have today. But I remember starting really, really young and just always having it in my life. I didn't start really competing and taking it seriously until I was probably around 8 years old. We travel a lot with my family. My two brothers, 20 and 22. They are 20 and 22. Yeah, we grew up on the mats together, and we all competed together, traveled with my dad to all the different training camps and tournaments. We traveled all over the country and internationally with him. He'd be coaching clinics, and it was just always a huge part of my life. I knew waking up, going to school, doing my homework, and going to judo. That was how it was growing up until I, took on some other sports, but always a big part of my life as a kid, especially.
What other sports were you playing?
When I got into, I want to say middle school, I started playing softball more seriously. I played softball and ice hockey all throughout high school. When I went to high school, I kind of got away from judo for a little bit, the sport, in a competitive way. I got away from it just because I wanted to try new things. It was always a part of my life. So I wanted to see what other things were out there that I would enjoy. Yeah. And I just loved sports. So I loved doing a bunch of different things at the same time.
Yeah. I grew up in New York, in the New York City suburbs on Long Island. And I didn't know that women played hockey until I went to boarding school in Massachusetts. I went to a school called Cushing, which I don't think is too far away from where you grew up. And they had an incredible girls hockey program and guys hockey program. And I was like, girls play hockey? But I learned that lesson. And many of the girls that were a few years younger than me, they were Olympians themselves. And a few of the girls that I was older than them, but I remember them very fondly, and they had incredible careers playing for the U.S. Women's Olympic team, ultimately winning gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, well, doing judo in general, you're practicing with boys and girls, right? Like everyone goes to practice together. It's not specific on whether you're a male or female. So growing up, I always was with my brothers. So I told my dad, I don't want to play softball. I want to play baseball. I want to play t-ball with my brothers. So I played on the boys teams for baseball up until I was at that age where they said, you probably should go over to softball. Same with ice hockey. I played on an all boys team up until I was like maybe 8 years old, 9 years old. But I was always around boys. And I think that's because of doing martial arts and being so comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later I went on the girls teams. But yeah, there was always a thing to do with my brothers.
And so I didn't catch where you are. Are you the oldest or the youngest?
I'm the oldest of 4. So I have 2 brothers who are close to me in age. I'm 24 years old. And my sister is 12. So there's a big gap between her and I. It was 12 years. So she wasn't really in the picture when we were growing up and doing sports together.
Yeah.
She's kind of having to do it on her own. But it was always me and the 2 brothers growing up.
So I'm trying to do some simple math in my head. You're about 24. Your dad won silver at the 96 Olympics?
My dad won bronze at the 96.
Yeah.
He went to 92, 96, 2000, and 2004. Yeah. He won bronze in 96 and 2004. And my sister wasn't born until 2008.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
So, yeah.
I have all these accomplishments. Like, I have a 2-year-old son, and I think about all the things that I've done even before he was born. It's just crazy. And now my wife is pregnant again. We have another baby.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you so much. On the way in April. So in April she'll be due. And it's just so funny that I've had this whole career in business.
Life.
And I've been living my life, and they're just about, starting out theirs. But you must have been just a few years old when your dad won the bronze.
Yeah, well, I was there at 96, newborn. I was born in June, and then the Olympics were, I think, back then in July or August. So I was there as a 1-month-old, a witness. I don't remember. I see pictures of him like holding me after and stuff. But and then 2004, we actually didn't all go. We all stayed home. My dad went. They're just 9 of us, but to go to Greece. So I remember it was always a thing where my dad would call my mom and I'd hear through that, because back then we didn't have, everything available on the internet and on our phones. And I was so young. So my dad would always have to go to a payphone or go find something to call my mom to let him know what's going on, to let him know. So that's how we found out when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, Dad won again? I didn't really understand what it was, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, what was it like growing up in a house, where basically like the job was kind of sports and martial arts? And did he have high expectations for you on the competition circuit? Was he tough on you? I think I remember reading some crazy things about your grandpa being extremely hard on him.
Yeah, my grandfather is the one that's going to tell you no BS, like be all over you on stuff. My dad, I don't want to say was easy on us. He was more of someone who said, as long as you're trying your hardest at everything that you do, he didn't care whether it was judo or another sport. He kept us in judo when we were really young, just because he believed in what it instilled in you. Mm-hmm. And then you could take those skills anywhere, like you're saying, to business, to whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be the sport. Growing up, I think the pressure that my brothers and I put on ourselves was definitely on our own. It was more of this like fear of what other people would think, just because he's my dad. And, you'd think like, oh my God, people are talking like, oh, I'm going to beat Jimmy Pedro's daughter, when it really didn't matter. Like, I was an 11-year-old kid. But it was just all pressure we put on ourselves. And I think that like my dad just kept us going with every sport that we did, and was always supportive of anything we chose to do. But judo was just always a thing that was there and available at all times, to even fall back on. You could always do. I think that's the case for most dojos, jiu-jitsu, judo, whatever it is. You can go off and do another sport or do something else and then come back to that club, and they'll welcome you no matter what level, no matter how much time you took off. You don't have to try out and make the team. You just come back and do it. And so any pressure you put on yourself it's yourself doing it.
Yeah, for sure. It is an interesting sport in that way, that you need your team, you need your teammates to train, but it is ultimately, when you get up there, you're up there by yourself. And, if you disappear, and I had years where I was training where I was on and off, mostly in the early mid years, been incredibly consistent over the past 6 or 7 years or so. But, and I just remember my sensei would always say, if you leave in good standing, you can always come back. And that was one of his lines.
Exactly.
And then the other one was, when the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. And you just, but most people, most people, when they fall off, they do fall off for good, which is one of the tragic parts of our sport, is they, in the martial arts community, they disappear, they come in consistently, and all of a sudden they're just gone.
Well, because it's hard, right? Like, the shape you have to be in for something like martial arts, especially judo and jiu-jitsu. Yeah. It's intimidating going back at first, because, like, I haven't taken a fall in a long time. I don't know if I'm ready to take a fall today.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if I'm ready to get thrown into the floor 10 times. My body's so soft from taking time off, like, it's a real thing. Yeah. And I think that's why so many people, when they stop, they're intimidated to go back.
100%. It took me a long time to flatten my ego enough to understand that was the reason I didn't want to go back. I would always make some kind of excuse, like I was too busy. I was growing my businesses. I had to go on a date. I had just all these things happening in my life. And I would be like, oh, well, I want to go back. I want to go back. As the weeks and the months piled on, then you're scared to go back.
Yeah.
And you have to have that talk with yourself and say, it's not that you're not just going back. You are terrified of getting thrown. Being thrown is one of the most uncomfortable feelings you could have if you don't know how to fall properly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I went through that in college, especially. Like, being nervous to go back. It was hard.
Especially at the kind of level that you've been surrounded with. Falling, I mean, it's a perfect metaphor for business, right? Because we do fall all the time in business. We fall flat on our face. We fail. We start something. It doesn't immediately have success. And you have to have that same talk with yourself and say, am I going to keep pushing forward until I make this happen? Or am I going to just give up? And sometimes it's okay to give up and pivot and move in business and life and anything else. But if it's just a matter of the fear or the embarrassment of that fall, then you have to get your ass up and get back to
100%
training.
Yeah. Yep. And that's something my dad pushes at our dojo with every athlete. I think some people who aren't used to being at our school come in and are a little shocked at that my dad is so, when you fall, you get right back up quick, right? Like, it's not you fall, you stay down, and you kind of roll over and slowly get up. That's showing your opponent you're already beaten. That's just, the mental game is over. It's over. You've shown them that you don't have the strength to get up right away and get right back in their face. And that's something that he's instilled in me, that if I fail, if I make a mistake, okay, I'm going to win. It doesn't matter. I get up and I try to win again and again and again. And that's what judo teaches me. We do that at every camp. We take 100 falls sometimes, There's everyone training for the world camp, and everyone has to go out just to take falls. Not even, you don't get to throw, you just take falls. Yeah. And that's really unique in a sport. I don't think there's many sports that you do that and you get used to doing that.
Yeah. It's, it hurts. I'm so happy to hear you say it as a black belt and a lifelong practitioner, because, when we cross train in judo for jiu-jitsu, and it's a part of our sport, but it's not it's like a cousin, people who are in martial arts get it. It's very hard for my friends and family who don't understand the difference between judo and jiu-jitsu. But when we do start off practice, I'm like, okay, today we're going to be doing throws. We're like, okay, we're going to work a Soto Gari, and I know I'm going to be taking those falls. It's like butterflies, tingling down my whole body until I hit the mat for the first time and get those cobwebs out.
Right. And you get those out. It doesn't hurt. It's so weird how it works. Like, if your body's used to taking falls and you do it all the time, it's almost like, one, you push through that mental barrier, but two, your body hardens to it. There's a flow to it. And, you know, you get in that flow, and if you're consistent, it's great. It's when you're inconsistent that it challenges you so hard going back. And that's what's intimidating.
Yeah.
Especially training with people who are at a high level. And I didn't have aspirations to go to the Olympics or to compete at that level.
Yeah.
So for me, like, honestly, and it was intimidating sometimes, you know, because I didn't have that hunger to take judo and to that level, to that high of a level.
I'll never forget one of my first judo clinics I took. This was almost 10 years ago, or maybe even a little bit more. Do you know Shintaro Higashi? Have you ever come across Shintaro?
Yeah, he actually just got hired by Fuji Sports, so I'm working with him right now. It's so funny. Like last week, that's so funny you mentioned that. Yeah.
So I remember he came to my dojo to do. I had to look up his last name because I didn't want to botch it, because I brought it up with your dad and I thought I botched his last name. But so Shintaro came to my dojo and ran a clinic, and I had only been taught from my sensei, who is also very high level judo. I believe he's a judo black belt as well, and he's friends with Shintaro. And I'll never forget when he was doing his demonstration, he threw one of our coaches. We had very low ceilings, and the soles of my coach's feet skimmed the drop ceiling. And it was like the hardest hit I'd ever seen. And I was like, oh my God, this is just, and it's just burnt into my head and my it's just crazy. And I've been very blessed to have some really high level judo instruction. Do you know Harry and Gary St. Ledger, the twins?
Oh, yeah.
So especially Harry, before he moved out to Albuquerque to be one of the coaches at Jackson Wink, he used to teach a couple classes a week at my dojo. And my sensei would often say, you don't know the gift I'm giving all of you, because you have Olympic level judo instruction here. And we wouldn't get that many people that would show up to their classes. And I remember him very vividly saying, like, they're not going to be here forever. You have to learn this technique while you can. And then he prophesized it, and Harry moved away, and I believe Gary opened his own school. And all that early judo training, like, I really think it kind of set me apart from a lot of like just the jiu-jitsu guys who never got that kind of training.
Oh yeah. So 100%. I see it. We have a jiu-jitsu school downstairs at our dojo, and sometimes the guys will come up and watch the judo, and they're like, oh, this is what we're missing, you know, but they're like, I don't know if I want to get involved in this. It seems a little much.
There's this guy, this past week at the Pan American Championships for the IBJJF, the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, he won, he was double gold in the blue belt level, but he's like this massive human being, and he's a judo black belt. And now he's starting the process over of getting his jiu-jitsu black belt. He was also like a professional level football player. I think he played for like the XFL or the Canadian Football League, but he was beating everybody with high level judo from the feet in the highest levels of competition. And it was just such a beautiful thing to watch. If you have a chance, I can't remember his name, but he was from Tennessee. It stuck out in my mind. But
I'm sure I could Google search him.
So let me get back into this with you. So you're coming up, you become a judo black belt. When did you get your black belt?
I got my black belt last December. So I had to make a decision, right? Like for judo, I took a break in high school, and I think at the time I was a brown belt. And then, yes, I was a brown belt. I took a break to play ice hockey and softball. And then in college, my first half of freshman year, you know, I was very busy getting used to living on my own for the first time, taking classes there. I went to Bentley University, which isn't far from where I live, but about an hour. Great school. Halfway through my freshman year, I just felt something was missing. And it could have been the fact that it was the first time I wasn't playing a sport, you know, but something just felt missing. I didn't feel at home there, and I wasn't allowed to have a car on campus. And the only way I could get a car was to get a job and have a valid reason. So I was like, yeah, I think I miss judo, as weird as it was, because I was so used to it my whole life. Yeah. And I was embarrassed to admit it to my family because it was always there. And I just, like, you know, when you're a kid, you don't take things, you take it for granted a little bit. You don't understand the value that you have. So, and I was immature in that way. And I remember telling my dad, like, I think I miss judo and I want to teach. So I went back to the dojo. I started teaching. I started training. I started going to camps and competing. And I just felt like myself again.
Mm.
And after like my freshman and sophomore year, I was very consistent, going everywhere to train and compete. I was given an opportunity to study in Europe. So I had to make a decision. I knew I was 5 months away from getting my black belt. My dad told me, December this year, you'll get it. But I decided to go over to Europe because it was a once in a lifetime chance. And I knew I could come back and do judo. I always had that option. So once I came back is when I finally put in the time. It took me a lot longer because I took that break and my dad's really hard on me. But I ended up getting it last year from teaching and consistency and all of that. But yeah, I earned it last December is when I got it.
That's fantastic. I mean, such an amazing accomplishment, and really shows you do something hard over a long period of time. And I can only imagine, doing it under your father. You got no special treatment.
No. You would think I would, because that's how it goes for a lot of sports. Like, oh, my dad's a coach, so I get to play all the time. That's not how it is in judo. It's no, you're gonna earn this, and everyone's gonna know that you're a black belt. You walk into a room and people know.
Absolutely. So. Well, like I mentioned, I work in a family business. I run two businesses: real estate business with my father, and a women's apparel business with my sister, and an e-commerce business. And you'd think, like, when you're in a family business that, everything just gets handed to you, and you just got the position or the promotion. But when you're in a family business, if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. There is no business.
No.
It must be a similar thing with judo, when you have teammates and world-class Olympians surrounding you and the highest level people coming through your dojo, and you're not going to get a single thing handed to you. You're going to have to earn it harder than everybody else. And so I would imagine that must be your experience. I just, knowing what I know about your family.
100%. Yeah. And I didn't even want to go to the Olympics myself or compete at that level. I just knew it wasn't in the cards for me. It wasn't my passion, but I wanted to surround myself with people like that. I wanted to be around them, not because I wanted to do the same things they did, but for the values that they have, the lifestyle that they live. That is so valuable to me, and to adapt to and to be around and to hang out with. Like, it really is important. The people you surround yourself with, it challenges you, and it pushes you in the right direction, even if it's not the exact same thing. It's the principles.
Absolutely. Well, your dad set me up with Travis Stevens, who is a contributor on the podcast and to the book. And he said something that'll stick with me forever. And he said something to the effect of, not a perfect quote. He goes, I don't even know anybody who would expect me to be out with them partying on a Friday or Saturday night. And I was like,
no,
wow.
That's 100% true. That's 100%. I know that. I know Travis very well, but I know that. And I know that everyone around him knows that. It's 100% valid statement.
It's amazing. And I was telling him, like, almost like my alter ego is martial arts. None of my friends or family really understand what it is that I do or why I love it so much, why I'm so addicted. Part of writing this book and doing this podcast was to surround myself in more bigger part of my life in martial arts, outside of just the training that I do every single night. Because I wanted to talk to people about it. I wanted to meet people who really cared about it. And I've traveled all over the world training jiu-jitsu. Everywhere I go for work and business, I always bring my gear, I bring my gi, I bring my rash guard, and I go train and I meet and I talk. But it's really kind of limited to just training in the mat. And so when I started mat chat. I started thinking about writing this book. It meant so much more to me. And now I've met so many amazing people like you and your dad, Travis, and just a laundry list now of people who were on the show or are going to be on the podcast. And I love hearing what you just said, which is, surrounding yourself with people who feel this way and understand this lifestyle. I try to tell people about it, and they look at me, they just don't get it.
Glaze over. I know.
Did you have a lot of friends in college that it was like a foreign concept to them that you did this?
Yeah, and especially, when I started doing judo again and competing, like everyone would go out and why are you staying in again? And it's like because like, I have other things that I'm involved in. They don't understand. I think a struggle too with judo is most people don't know what it is. So it's
Yeah.
like not only am I choosing to live my life a certain way, they don't even understand what the thing is that I do.
Yeah.
And it's almost isolating in a way. I didn't mind it because I had a whole community. I have a family who's involved in it, whatever. But
Yeah.
it is a little bit of an obstacle, in social settings and especially at school, living on campus. It's different, and people don't understand, nor do they even have a clue about what you're talking about or training for or teaching or doing, it's funny.
Yeah.
But,
Did Bentley have a judo program of any kind?
oh no.
Is Bentley the school that has
Yeah.
the trading floor in the business school?
Yes, a trading room. Yes.
Yeah, trading room. Right. Yeah, I remember when I went to Northeastern in Boston, and when I was looking at schools, I knew I wanted to be in Boston, and so I was looking at Northeastern and Bentley and Babson, and I think that was Bentley. Yeah, but
yeah.
anywho, yeah, it just I find this when people kind of turn. I didn't find martial arts until after college when I was 24.
Oh yeah.
So I was right around the age that you are now, and that's when I began my journey. I was looking I was filling a void from growing up playing sports my whole life. I played lacrosse. I was a competitive ski racer, and I was, and then I played like soccer and football and like all throughout my life, all different sports, but always playing a sport. And when I graduated from college, that was over. And what do I do now? And that's how I just I ran into a family friend who had opened a jujitsu gym by my office, and he's like, "Oh, you should come down." And that was it. I went down and just walked in and fell in love with it.
The love story began.
So what kind of things are you doing with Fuji Sports?
So I work in the custom department. So any gym owner who wants to design gear for their school, so they want to design their gis, their rash guards, their spats, build their brand identity. I help them do that. So I'm their first and only point of contact. So any school owner who's looking to do that, they'll reach out to Fuji. We'll create a design for them. They'll put in an order for their entire school, and then I take care of everything from there and get them their stuff. So
we were I showed your dad my original Fuji gear. We were only permitted to wear Fuji 11 years ago at the founding of our school. And a warm, special place in my heart for Fuji many, many, many years ago. But so is that something that was taking up full time for you, or you?
That's what I do. Yeah. So I do that full time. I was teaching, my parent and toddler judo program before then. I had already started that. But the schedule is I had so much extra time after graduation that I needed another job too. And I was trying to find something, in the industry, something that fit my interest, something that would complement my parent and toddler judo program, because I can design all my own gear too and do all of those nice things for it. And it's very flexible. I work from home. It's all remote. So I can go teach a class, go work, work in between classes, whatever I need to do. So it's just like a perfect combination for me.
Yeah. So you have, let's kind of go through some of the things you do. You have a parent toddler program, and that was the first program that you were really running at school, but that wasn't a separate business. Those were classes at Pedro Judo Center. Is that right?
Yeah. So yes, but we had never offered anything under 5 years old. So it was kind of a new concept that we had to, figure out. Well, I had to figure out, but yeah, that was a new concept at the school, and that's something that is under Pedro's Judo Center, correct?
Yeah, but this new business that you're starting, and I'm just going to share my screen for a second on your Instagram, is called the Crawl Program, and is someone who has a 2-year-old and is always looking for things for them to do for toddlers. Kind of just walk me through what this is, who it's for, why you thought that this was a new niche, and kind of what you've been doing to get it started.
Yeah. So when I started the parent and toddler judo program, it was from scratch, and I thought about why I wanted to do something like that. And I had taught classes at the dojo before for the older kids. And it was always, you know, why are you coming to judo? Because most of the time it's not just for the sport. They don't even know what the heck judo is. They're just walking into a gym and saying, I need my kid to do something, right? And whether it's because they're getting bullied, whether it's because they need more physical exercise, or they want to put them in a positive community, builds confidence, any of those reasons is why parents would bring their kids most of the time, 99% of the time, to the dojo. And I thought about that as an older kid, you know, 10 years old, maybe super shy, gets bullied at school. And it seemed like such a reactive thing to do. And, you know, I thought about the youngest you could hit a kid and be preventative for those things, right? Like, how can I look at it as a preventative sport? And I'm like, you just have to target the youngest of the youngest and have them build confidence, do all these crazy things that you think, you know, you can really only teach somebody who understands the concepts fully. Why can't I make it so simple and get them into the habit of doing these things, get them into the habit of, you know, introducing themselves? And it sounds silly, but I have 3-year-olds that introduce themselves to the dojo every time they come in, you
Doesn't
know,
sound
and
silly to me. It sounds perfect. Yeah.
I know. I think like seeing a little 2-year-old walk in, like Gugu Gaga, but Konich bows and says Konnichiwa. It's like, this is something really special, you know? So I thought about like, what are the exercises and skills and all the things that I can do with a toddler? And I took a lot of psych classes, child psych classes at school. And I was always, you know, involved in like kid communities and boys and girls clubs. And I just like loved working with kids and could connect with kids. So I built this whole curriculum that was really trial and error for the first year with the students. And it just caught on. Everyone loved it. You know, people kept coming back and giving me feedback and advice, and gave me, you know, would fill out surveys and I'd figure out ways to improve it. And it got to a place where I had so many students that I didn't have enough time slots. I didn't have enough space. I didn't have enough staff. And I wanted to expand. And, you know, I had to figure out, you know, like why am I doing this? And how can I get other school owners to be able to share this? It's just in my head. I wanted to put it on paper and allow other schools to, you know, one, bring in revenue for their school, but also touch on those toddler, the 2 to 4-year-old demographic, and have them be able to participate. And the reason why we never had judo for under 4 years old was because of neck stability, and you're technically not allowed to be doing partner on partner judo because, you know, you can't take a fall as a 2-year-old with no neck stability. So I had to think of a way for them to do the movements, but not on each other. And that's where I brought in teddy bears. And I had all of the kids literally throwing teddy bears and practicing the movements on little teddy bears. And it just caught on, and the kids, I think it was comfortable because they were with, you know, a soft little bear, but also like it worked. So the crawl program started this whole concept of expanding, and I want to eventually sell the curriculum to other schools so that they can launch this program. In the past like 8 months during COVID, and a big thing for me was I had to change the whole program because of COVID. You know, we had like 25 kids on the mat, or 25 people on the mat, 12 kids, 12 parents. You know, it was very busy on Sundays. There were 6 classes, but COVID hit and I was like, what am I gonna do? Everyone is like all over everyone. You know how toddlers are. They're running around rampant sometimes, and you can't like social distance. It's very hard.
Yeah.
So we had to restructure the whole program, and it ended up working out where I could create the program without any investment needed for equipment, for any of these things. And I was like, this is just the perfect solution for people who want to open a program. They don't have to invest in the rope that we have, the box jumps, the ladders, all the equipment that I use that we had available is no longer needed for the curriculum that I wrote for COVID. So it kind of like pushed me in that direction to have something that's not, you don't have to spend $3,000 to get it, and you can start it, and I can teach you how to do this at your school and help kids build those skills from the earliest age that they can even speak. And it's going great. And that's something that like, I'm going to take the time and continued to grow. I have a partner now who came on with me. Is actually Travis Stevens' wife. She started on with me, so she's a
judo. She's a Canadian judo
yep,
Olympian. Yeah.
yep. She's a Canadian judo Olympian, 2-time Olympian, black belt. She just loved the concept. You know, she wants to start a family herself, and we're growing it right now, figuring out all the, you know, the logos, everything we're going to use for this, and finalize everything before we are able to sell it to other schools. But
So did I hear you say that you had gotten this up to 6 classes on a Sunday when
yeah,
COVID?
I had 6 classes back to back before
Oh my
COVID with
goodness.
like 10 to 12 kids per class. It was a zoo, but it was so fun. I was there every Sunday, all morning and afternoon, and that was my weekend thing to do. It's a lot of work, but it was great. It was awesome.
It's first of all, well, I have so many things to unpack from that little segment because you organically started something, grew it, made it incredibly successful by anybody's standards. To have even one class of toddlers is very difficult, you know, for most martial art academies to get that many students. And so it speaks volume to the quality of what you were offering and the word of mouth. And there's so many good business lessons to unpack there about how you were able to do that. And so much of what business is giving a great service at a good price, making people happy, giving them a clean environment, a good experience for their kids. It reminds me of my best friend's wife. She was a speech pathologist, and she started a program for the similar age kids called Look Who's Talking Now. And it's to teach them how to start speaking around the same age. And it also kind of took off like this, like wildfire. And it's just
Right.
when you have, you know, people like yourself who are talented and hardworking, and you have all this life experience and schooling, but then you actually take that risk and you start that business. Do you remember the first class? Like how many students were in the first class?
I think there were 7 or 8 in my first class ever. And I don't know. I don't remember, like, the parents are on the mat with the kid too, by the way. So it's just like a fun environment. And it was so new, but I had taught so many classes before that I just, you know, went at it. And it was more of just connecting with the kids, just having them feel comfortable, and having the parents feel like they're involved, and which they are. It just, I don't know. I remember the first class. I remember being a little nervous at first because I didn't know how a 2-year-old was going to react. It's like a gamble. You have no clue if they're going to just cry and run out the door, which has happened, or if they're going to, you know, actually be able to do the exercises too, right? Like, I had never tried the exercises on a toddler except for one cousin that I had run through a class with. So it felt like an experiment, but it
Sure.
went okay. So
much of business is that, and I could attest to 2-year-olds that it's hard to keep their attention for even a minute or two.
yeah.
So that's great that you had the parents. Yeah. Were many of these any of the parents students of the academy?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. For my first session,
yeah,
maybe one, maybe. I didn't really. We already had, you know, a dojo community to send out emails to about this new program, but I just went all over Facebook, to be honest. Yeah. I just posted in like all of the community groups that were around that area. I made a landing page in our website and put in all of the things that I wanted to accomplish through the program with the kids, and just would share and share and share on Facebook. And that's how I got signups. And I didn't have to invest a ton of money into marketing or any of that to start off. I didn't know how it was going to go. So I tried to do as much as I could with as little money and resources that I had to use. And that's how I got the first couple of signups. Yeah. And then it was word of mouth.
Any bumps, any false starts, no one showed up for a class this day?
No, that never happened. It never happened where no one showed up or anything like that. I'm trying to think. So I used to organize the classes. Like everything is very quick, right? Like I have to move from one thing to the next and always be engaged and ready to go with the kids because their attention span is so small. One of the maybe like road bumps I had was I was trying to figure out how to make things go smoothly with kids running around and like trying to assign them stations and all of this stuff at the same time. And I had sent out a survey to the parents because I was kind of stressing out about making sure the class was a good experience for everyone. And one of the greatest like feedback that I got from a parent was so simple, but it changed like the way class went. And it just takes that like reaching out to people and asking like, how can I make this better for you and make this not like as least chaotic as it can be for a toddler. And one of the parents hit me back and said, honestly, the only thing that I could say that would help tremendously is just numbering all of the places to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 12. Yeah. And it would be great. We could just all funnel through the stations by number. I did that and it completely changed the flow of class. The kids were like psyched to have a number, like the simplest things that you can't think of on your own sometimes. Like it's really cool having involved parents too, who, you know, care about the program and see what it does for their kids. So they want to share and they want to give feedback. And I love when people criticize and give me that because I'm like, this is perfect to make it better, you know?
Well, you had the courage to ask. You know, a lot of people, they don't want to ask. They just want to try to ram their way of thinking down people's throats. And instead of asking for help and asking for feedback to keep honing and making better, that's one of the keys to business success is listening more
100%.
than So as a business leader, I always have to find that healthy balance to make sure I'm hearing what people are telling me versus just trying to sell them what I'm thinking.
Right. The willingness to listen for sure and be open to criticism. You have to be open to it, you know, and not take it personally. You know, take it as like, this is an actual tool that I can use to make it so much better for people. Like it matters how people feel on the other side. Your consumer, right? Your customer. Like that's what's important. I don't care about how I feel about what I'm doing when it comes to those like nitty gritty details. You know, if I can't think of things off the top of my head, sometimes I have to ask people like, what would make this better for you? And then take that and make sure it aligns with my mission, but take that and then use it in my class, you know?
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with judo either.
Now post COVID, are the classes back up and running?
Yeah. So I have classes up and running right now. It's all social distance. So they're with the parent. Our mats are actually checkered. So we have like blue square, white square, blue square. So I have the parents like on their own squares. They come in one by one. We have screenings at the beginning and end of class and stuff. So it's going well. We've just had to shrink the sizes. I can only run 4 classes back to back we have to clean the mats in between and all of the cleaning takes a lot of time. So, but yeah, we're back and running. I started again in August.
Good. And how about the kind of phase 2 of getting this into the hands of some other academies, selling it to them? The curriculum?
So, yeah, it's a matter of I have to film. I have to finish the filming. So I have the curriculum written down, but I have to actually teach how to teach the curriculum, right? So demonstrating the techniques, the proper way to teach it to a 2-year-old, you know, is much different than you would teach a 6-year-old or an adult. So it's getting down the level of a child and having them feel comfortable and doing something that they're able to do. That's not just overwhelming, but making it fun too is key for judo. You have to make it fun.
Something you're filming for judo fanatics or maybe just for your own site or YouTube?
We don't know yet. We're still in the works. I'm working with Travis and Kalita and my dad on this. So we're going to figure out what the best way to get it to the masses is. But the first things first is to film.
Well, I'm just so impressed with everything that you've done so far. I love new business creation. This is exactly what my book is going to be about, targeting people. Probably you right before you kicked off this, you know, this new business, and people, I especially people who are at high levels of martial arts, because what happened over the years in my dojo is they knew I was an entrepreneur and they wanted to start a business. So they would come to me and say, I've got this great idea. And they would they weren't even white belts yet. They hadn't even started the journey, but they already wanted to be a black belt. And I said,
Right.
give them a very simple metaphor of, this is going to take you time. You don't get your black belt in a day. This is going to be years of struggling, of hitting the mat, of pain, of not wanting to walk in, of not wanting to train. Maybe you even fall off for a little bit and like you have to come back. And so when I see someone like you who's recently out of school and you've been surrounded, you've had all this good training, all this good schooling, but then you're putting it into practice, it's so inspiring. So I really commend you. And
Thank you.
An exciting conversation. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also, give you a shout out as a woman entrepreneur, because women entrepreneurship is at much lower levels than male entrepreneurship. And through your entire life, as you've just told us, you never let that, being with the boys stop you. You just did it. At my fashion company, we have about 225 employees and only 4 or 5 of them are men. And I'm constantly trying to promote female entrepreneurship and business creation, and that, the women can 100% do anything that guys do inside of these businesses. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me too. And this is cool. I've never done this before. It's cool.
Yeah. I could see this. You should start a podcast for your new business. I think that there'd probably be a lot of gym owners out there that would love to talk to you and figure out a way for them to add a class like this, because, our industry is hurting bad. And it is going to be forever changed. My heart is breaking for all of the gym owners and martial artists out there who haven't been able to train, haven't been able to pay rent. And they're like trying to what do I do now? And so I can imagine that having 5 or 6 or even 3 toddler classes in addition to their kids program and maybe their teens program, maybe the juice that they need. So it's very timely.
Exactly. That's what I think that's what sparked this, really got it going too, as weird as it sounds.
Well, I hope that you'll come back on the podcast again in a couple months, maybe give us an update on the business. And if I have any questions, I hope you don't mind if I reach out to you, because I'm going to be, I suspect this is probably going to take me a good 2 years to write. My last book took about 2 years, and I got started before COVID, but then I had my own, I stopped for 3 months and I lost all my momentum. So now I'm picking it back up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm excited to read it. And what's your other book that you wrote?
It's called, this is right here. It's called This Is It. And it's a book about my first 10 years in business working alongside my dad. And it's all about the core values and the mindset. And then most importantly, a lot of our failures. I've been blessed with a lot of business success and growing businesses, and it all comes at the heels of a lot of failures. And I talk openly about those failures in the book and my missteps and my miscalculations. And that's just a part of being in business. If you close up shop and walk away at the first sign of trouble, then you didn't really want it in the first place. And like you said, I've had stretches where it's been a year of no progress, or an easy change. We could have fixed something so easily and it just didn't occur to us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, it was a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on your new business. I'm so excited to watch the journey. I followed you on Instagram so I can get all the updates. And please feel free to stay in touch. If there's anything that you need from me, if I could be of service to you in real estate or fashion or anything else, you can reach out to me at any time. And if I have any questions, I absolutely will reach out to you when I begin drafting.
Please do. Thank you very much, Jordan.